With 2020 Spiritual Vision is the CSL theme for 2020. March's theme is honoring the divine feminine in all. Today's topic, the Holy Reimagine. Ernest Holmes in the Science of Mind, the first cause is both masculine and feminine in its nature and includes the intermediate principle of creative activity. Dennis Merritt Jones wrote in the Science of Mind magazine this month, as two omnipresent aspects of the Creator, the masculine and feminine principles are each an exquisite gift, a twofold universal principle imbued in every human being. Let us speak this truth together with conviction. The divine feminine
is in perfect balance with
the divine masculine in me, and I see the Spirit shining in all beings across the gender continuum. And so it is.
All right. A child was drawing a picture in their Sunday school class, and the teacher came up and said, "What are you drawing?" And the child said, "I'm drawing God." And the teacher said, "Well, nobody has seen God. How could you draw God? That doesn't even make sense." And the child said, "Well, you'll know what God looks like when I'm done with it." So how do you draw God? How would you draw God as a child or even as today? How would you draw that presence? Think about it. Many of us, when we were growing up, may have drawn something that looked kind of like the old picture of the guy in the sky with the long white beard sitting on a throne, right? That was what we were presented as we were growing up. And over time, yes, things have evolved. We've had the women's movement, and we've brought forward the divine feminine, and yet still there lingers in the subconscious mind of humanity that thing that has been thrown off balance, actually, by that image of a male-only God. And so this month is about bringing that back into balance. This is not about replacing the masculine. It's not that at all. This is about realizing that it's important to raise our awareness of what this thing called the feminine principle is from a spiritual level, to support us integrating that. And this is for men and women, integrating that into our being. Because as Ernest Holmes noted, I was just reading some things on his ideas about the masculine and feminine. He said that those people who have been most effective in a positive way on the planet, whether male or female, are this nice balance of both, where their masculine and their feminine are developed into the kind of a balance that makes them really effective people. So that's what we're after this month. I'm after that for all of us, and I hope you join me in that, and knowing that this is a journey that will continue to support us in our experience of our wholeness and the development of all of our potentialities and capacities as divine beings. So this week, we're beginning at the beginning with reimagining our concept of God to one that's more holistic. So that's where it starts. That was the whole point of that little story I told at the beginning, is reimagining. And it really is about planting new, more expanded ideas and consciousness of what we think of as the divine. So here's the deal. We can't really change the ultimate nature of God, can we? It is what it is. It simply is. And yet, we know that our linguists tell us this, that our language, or the way that we describe God, shapes our thinking. If words or expressions such as what we talked about, the male-only God, are part of our they're planted in our subconscious mind, then we begin to see women as inferior. And that assumption of inferiority becomes a part of the mindset not only in men but in women. And it determines our actions. So therefore, women are treated as inferior. And we've experienced this. At one point or another, I know I haven't, women that I talk to experience this. Women are treated as inferior. Women in leadership are disrespected. Especially when their mother bear comes through and they're in protector mode, they often are maligned and instead of seen as the powerful women that they are. And women experience inequality at home and in the workplace. And women actually even undermine other women. Have you witnessed that? Women actually undermining other women. And so, rather than coming into support of one another. Well, the beautiful thing about this community is that we are all in support of one another, so I don't experience it here. But I have experienced it before, and it's really disconcerting. So what happens is not only do women have poor self-images, it restricts men to very limited roles. And so it actually we all suffer. We all suffer because we're suffering from all of us not developing the full potentiality of what we have available to us. And all of this, think about this, all of this comes from an out of balance concept of God. And so for some people, the word God even rattles them. I do get that. And so that's why I'm asking you to reimagine this concept called God, because the word God is not going to go away anytime in the near future. So why don't we just reimagine it, expand it, give it both the masculine and the feminine qualities. We can do that, and then therefore open ourselves to a greater expression of that in our mindset, in our subconscious mind, and therefore in our world. So think about what this does then. If we begin to embody both the masculine, or begin to reimagine both the masculine and the feminine qualities as aspects of the divine, and then see the divine as even beyond that, and then begin to realize that therefore this presence that we're talking about is whole. Presence is whole. And therefore we, as made in its likeness and image, microcosms of the macrocosm, are whole. It's easier to embrace wholeness from that perspective and oneness consciousness, realizing that the masculine and the feminine is present in everyone, whether they are male or female. So here's some interesting information that I found out about the early Hebrews in ancient times. So, back in the ancient times, there were many gods and goddesses in most of the religions. And what I've learned, because I have a close friend who is Hindu, she made very clear to me that all of these different faces of God, Saraswati and Kali and all of the different gods and goddesses, Shakti, Shiva, are all representatives of certain attributes or qualities of the one. There's a recognition that there's one. So what happened when the Hebrews came along, they decided to honor and focus on the one God. And it's interesting to note that they used various words to describe that one. They used El, which is masculine, Eloah, which is feminine, and they used Elohim, which is a mixture, mixed gender, male and female, and plural. So in essence, Elohim, I love this one, it finally dawned on me, could be translated as Mother, Father, God. Mother, Father, God, you know? And so that was in the early Hebrew tradition. And so what happened though, and then if you go on and you think of the creation story, Elohim, that mixed gender Mother, Father, God, created humanity in its, and I'd say its because it's a combination male and female, in its image. Then we begin to see that we are all, we show up as male, female, but we have that mixture of all of those attributes within us. Then what happened? What happened over time? What happened is that it got translated into English, into the King James Version, and the masculine was emphasized, and actually a lot of the imagery of God were masculine imageries, the punishing God, and so on. And in the feminine aspect of the divine fell out of favor, or it was just sort of disappeared from conscious awareness. So then this thing called balance that we're talking about today between masculine and feminine became virtually unknown to the Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And this is interesting. To the ancient Hebrews, this is a book by Jeff Benner called the Ancient Hebrew Research Center. He said to the ancient Hebrews, balance is order. Anything out of balance is chaos. So what we're talking about here is bringing things back into order in ourselves and in our world. The divine feminine then is an energy, a power, and an attribute of God, not a gender. Not a gender. That's a really important point. It's not a gender. These are attributes of the divine. So think for a moment of the many representatives of the divine feminine through all our world religions. And actually in the Christian religion there are some images of the divine feminine, which would be the Virgin Mary, Mary Magdalene, and Sophia. And of course, then there are all the goddesses in the ancient Greek times, like Athena, Kuan Yin, all of the gods and goddesses, as I mentioned before, of the Hindu religion, Kuan Yin, Saraswati, and again the Hindu goddess Kali, who is the fierce mother protector. So you think about all the qualities and attributes, the energies that they represent. Again, this is not about gender. This is about attributes. The receptive nature of the divine. Open-mindedness, open-heartedness, compassion, nurturing, and again, that fiercely protective mother bear. Which we see, and actually Marianne Williamson talks about that a lot. She talked a lot about it in some of her books. I've seen her speak multiple times in various settings, and she emphasizes the importance of women and men stepping into the fierce mother bear energy, the protective energy, to protect our planet, to protect our people, to stand up for social justice. This aspect of the divine feminine is so important, particularly in this day and age. So honoring the divine feminine then is about developing our spiritual magnificence. Ernest Holmes in his depiction of these energies talked about the masculine principle within us and within the all that is as the self-assertive spirit or the conscious mind. And then the feminine principle, again, both in the divine and in the human as divine, is the soul, the universal soul, that's receptive to the spirit, or the subconscious mind is another way of looking at it. The conscious mind and the subconscious mind, the masculine and the feminine. The doer, the doing, and the being aspects of ourselves. So in perfect balance then, and working properly, we are able to engage in the creative process. Those of us who studied, the science of mind symbol, spirit or masculine, receptive feminine, and the manifestation. Again, this is not about gender. This is about qualities within all of us that we can develop. So when we honor the divine feminine, we bring it into balance with the sacred masculine. Curiosity replaces fear. Generosity replaces greed. Creativity replaces complacence. Compassion replaces insensitivity. Collaboration replaces competition. And we grow and we fulfill our vision. What is our vision? We say it every Sunday. Being the presence of love, co-creating heaven on earth, a world that works for everyone. Yeah, so that's what it's all about. So what I'd like to do now is call Candace up to share about Emma Curtis Hopkins. Yes. And she's one of our, you'll learn, she's one of our new thought women.
Today is International New Thought Day, so it's a perfect time.
Are you going to be okay? Is that good?
To celebrate Emma Curtis Hopkins for any numbers of reasons. She's always worthy of celebration. It's the International Women's Month, and this whole month we're going to be celebrating feminine champions of New Thought, past or present.
Mm-hmm.
So, but let's begin at the beginning, as Kathleen mentioned, and Emma Curtis Hopkins was one of the founders, as some people call her the mother of New Thought, for sure. Let's see where I want to go with this. Okay, so she was just a giant of spiritual revelation. She was born in 1849 to a farm family. She was the oldest of 9 children. And she was well educated. Both of her parents were very awake and aware and had the capacity to offer education to all of their children. So she was incredibly well educated, and she had an incredibly keen mind. She excelled in both mathematics, science, and literature, and actually became a teacher of education. So beyond that, and in her evolution, she became a teacher of teachers, but not of literature, although all of her writings are very literate. She became a teacher of metaphysics. And the reason that this happened was that she, at some point in her life, after teaching in school and then having to leave school because she had gotten married and had a child, and that was not acceptable any longer at that day and age for a woman to be working and when she was married and had children. So she had to leave the teaching profession. But as her son grew, and for some reason there was a dis-ease going around, a respiratory dis-ease, interesting, as we are experiencing right now. Mm-hmm. And she became compromised, and actually she and the family were under threat of serious illness culminating in death. And she had been introduced to Mary Baker Eddy through her neighbor and friend, who was Mary Berry, and who had been a student of Mary Baker Eddy's. And when the family was so ill, Mary Berry asked if she could please come over and give them treatment. Well, very shortly after the treatment, everyone healed and became well. And Emma Curtis Hopkins, even though she had more of a scientific, logical, masculine, we might say, from that perspective, mind, she was like, wait a minute, that divine receptive feminine said, there's more here, I need to explore this. I've been given a gift. This is a huge gift. This cannot be ignored. And so she immediately contacted Mary Baker Eddy for training, and she went and took the training. And very quickly, within a year's time, she was healing. She was a healer. She was seeing clients. She was also writing for the Christian Science Journal, the Journal of Christian Science. And she became the editor in a very short period of time. She was using that wholeness of her being, the divine feminine, divine masculine, to say yes to life. And that's why, to me, her life itself is an amazing demonstration. So shortly after she was there, for about a year, but she was a perennial student. She also had this belief system that God is everywhere, and God shows up in many different ways. Well, Mary Baker Eddy believed that she had been given the divination of the ultimate one and only truth, and Emma Curtis Hopkins was exploring Hinduism, exploring Buddhism, exploring Judaism, and in fact, she was, having been classically trained, she actually read Pythagoras in the original Greek, studied the writings of early Christian mystics in the original Latin, and from references in her text appeared she was able to read German and understood the difference between Aramaic, spoken at the time of the Roman Empire, and Hebrew, used in the Jewish temple, and the Torah. This was a woman who had amazing capacity of knowledge, retention, and creative use of this. So she had this broad scope, and I would say Mary Baker Eddy did her the favor of saying, I'm sorry, you don't fit here. Actually, she didn't even say that. She just said, God. But as Spirit works, from my perspective, that was her gift to become who she was being called to be. And she said yes. So having moved to Chicago, working in another metaphysical journal, it was a Christian healing journal, she set up shop and did her healing with clients, and slowly built quite an extensive clientele, and soon developed a school, which was, what was it called? It was called the Emma Curtis Hopkins College of Christian Science. And her first class graduated 37 students, and among those 4 became giants in the New Thought movement, opening up their own centers. So some of the people that she trained were Charles and Myrtle Fillmore of Unity, Melinda Kramer and the Brooks sisters, who were founders of Divine Science, the Ricks sisters, the founders of the Home of Truth Spiritual Center, and of course Ernest Holmes, the founder of Religious Science, from which we come, that's our lineage, and all being under the umbrella of New Thought Ancient Wisdom. Many of Emma's students were women, and having had that experience, being such a brilliant individual, but having that experience of being denied her fulfillment, she knew that she had to reach out to women. She encouraged women, she trained women, and many women fulfilled their potential by becoming leaders and teachers in the New Thought movement. This was a door that was open to them. And the people that I mentioned, other than Ernest Holmes and Charles Fillmore, were all leaders, huge leaders, demonstrators, and I'm sure through the month that we'll hear about more of them. She was a feminist. She believed in the power of women as whole beings, as we do today, and she wanted to see all women fulfill themselves. She worked with many of the leaders of the suffrage movement. Many of them became her students. So she was integrally involved in that early 19th century or late 19th century movement that brought the vote to women. Even though that was 30 years after she was teaching, she was part of the groundwork of bringing the empowerment to women and bringing balance to society. So she lived and taught the triune nature of God, the wholeness, unity, the mother, father, God. She brought that terminology into the lexicon, which hadn't been accepted prior to that in the Western society. So she, just stood as a powerful demonstration of the divine feminine into our awareness, into our awakening. She wrote Christian Science Mental Practice, which we use in our core class teachings. She wrote High Mysticism. She is and was and ever will be a mystic, and her legacy we are all part of and experiencing right here and right now. Ernest Holmes took her course just a year before she died. He had tried to connect with her, and they were ships passing. And finally, when she settled and he knew that her health was failing, he went to visit her. She received him, and he had private sessions with her until he had completed all 12. Her lessons were designed as 12 lessons, 12 being a powerful number representing the teachings and the disciples of the Christian faith. She taught denials and affirmations, and that was to get very clear on what's true and what's not, what holds the power, the true power, which is the divine reality, or what is illusion. So I wanted to invite us all just to share in some of those denials and then the affirmations in honor of her, in celebration of her, and in standing in the truth of our belief system as we know it, that the negative, that which is not life-giving, has no real intrinsic value, and so it is not truth. And the affirmations are pivoting. I thought about this idea. The denial is looking at what we see that's uncomfortable, that we don't want, and pivoting to the light where the truth, the healing, the power, the peace arises within us and we share with each other. So we gain? Yes, all right. Okay, so denial. There is no evil. There is no evil. There is no matter.
There is no matter.
There is no absence of life.
There is no absence of life.
There is no sin.
There is no sin.
No sickness.
No sickness.
No death.
No death.
Affirmations. God is my good.
God is my good.
God is life.
God is life.
God is truth.
God is truth.
God is love.
God is love.
God is substance.
God is substance.
Intelligence.
Intelligent.
Omniscient.
Omniscient.
Omnipresent.
Omnipresent.
And omnipotent.
And omnipotent.
I am spirit mind.
I am spirit mind.
Wisdom, strength, and wholeness.
Wisdom, strength, and wholeness.
The I am works inevitably through me.
The I am works inevitably through me.
To will and to do.
To will and to do.
That which ought to be done by me.
That which ought to be done by me.
I am governed by the law of God.
Governed by the law of God.
And cannot sin.
And cannot sin.
Or fear sin.
Or fear sin.
Sickness.
Sickness.
Or death.
Or death.
And so it is.
And so it is.
Thank you.
All right.
Are you going back?
Huh? No.
Oh!
I'm done. I'm done. Okay, I'm done. Sean?
We were talking about what you did.
Hi, everyone. I love you all. Hit it, man!
I kind of stopped like I didn't know it was over, so anyway. Hold on just a second.
Okay.
I wish I had a really good spirit.